The elegant airport lounge was filled with the soft hum of travelers. Dr. Alistair, a successful surgeon, sat in a plush armchair. A fancy brunch had just been finished by him, and now a bitter espresso was being sipped slowly. His perfectly pressed suit was a sign of his precision. Beside him, a silver cabin suitcase was squeezed into a narrow space. Luggage is often given a lot of attention in places like this, where the global economy is discussed by everyone in suits. A new guest arrived, bringing a sharp change in atmosphere. Mrs. Gable was known for her stubborn attitude. She refused to let the porter touch her bag. A low grunt was let out by her as she struggled with a heavy, old-fashioned case. Her mascara was applied with such perfection that she looked like she was ready for a film set. "This way, please," a staff member muttered, but she simply ignored him. Alistair watched as Mrs. Gable sat down across from him. Between them sat a vintage trunk covered in stickers from distant lands. "It is supposed that this trunk has traveled more than I have," she said, her voice like sandpaper. Indeed, it was filled with tiny trinkets and history. Alistair was intrigued. His own life was governed by modern science, but he was always drawn to things that had been preserved through time. Mrs. Gable explained that she owned a small branch of a vintage shop in the city. In her shop, lots of clothes were displayed on velvet hangers. Sometimes the fabric was found to be delicate and rare. However, the business was not easy. The main supplier had been found to be unreliable, and items were often scattered across the floor after a busy day. She had to manage the economics of the shop while keeping the magic alive. She opened the trunk to show Alistair a beautiful dress. It had been torn years ago during a storm. "It was mended by my own hands," she whispered. Every string had been pulled tight, and a tiny daisy had been pinned over the largest hole. This chore was performed every evening until the dress was perfect again. She refused to give up on it, even when others told her to throw it away. Alistair nodded. He knew what it was like to face obstacles. In the operating room, lives were saved through focus, but sometimes he had to pretend that he wasn't exhausted. He could not be convinced to take a break when a patient's health was at risk. "Precision is required in both our jobs," he said. He had learned that the most difficult problems are often solved when you refuse to give up. Suddenly, a gust of wind hit the large windows of the lounge, making the glass rattle. A soft sigh was let out by Mrs. Gable. Outside, a bird began to chirp despite the gray sky. "The weather cannot be controlled," she remarked. Alistair watched a single leaf from a nearby decorative branch fall onto the carpet. They both took turns, sharing stories of times when nature had disrupted their best-laid plans. "The surge of technology has changed everything," Alistair said. He explained how his travel account was managed by an app, while she still used a paper ledger. Economic growth was often discussed at his hospital, and economical measures were being taken to save resources. As a surgeon, he had to take account of every detail, just as she did with the vintage items in her shop. Mrs. Gable smiled. "I might be as cunning as a fox when it comes to business, but I still love the old ways." She told him about her time in a local choir, where every voice had to be perfectly in sync. It was a beautiful memory that she refused to let become a ghost of the past. "You take after your father, I imagine," she said to Alistair, noticing his steady hands. Their flight was finally called. A coffee was accidentally spilled by a passing passenger, but Alistair helped the man get over his embarrassment. He did not intend to badger the poor man. "We are all like castaways on this journey," Alistair thought. He helped Mrs. Gable with her trunk. As they walked toward the gate, a sense of connection was felt by both, proving that even strangers can be linked by the stories they carry.